Hello everyone, it's Ryan again from Dark Winter Moon in Boston, and I am back from vacation and back in Boston, and today I wanted to talk to you all about blood magic, and specifically tattoos that have a spiritual and religious and witchcraft significance. All of my tattoos that I've gotten so far, all 6, have a special witchcraft and pagan and or religious significance to them. And I wanted to talk to you all about the care and the intention and the mindfulness that goes into any tattoos that you put on your body, especially as a witch. Tattoos are permanent and they are a form of blood magic. So one should be very careful about what you put on your body, especially if it is a magical symbol or a deistic symbol of some sort. So let's use getting a tattoo of a rune as an example. So runes are very ancient, very meaning dense symbols from a specific culture and time that many of us use as modern witches as a form of divination. But they were also a magical writing system and still can be used that way. What I'm getting at is, before you put a rune on your body, it would be important to fully understand what that rune means in all of its nuance and context. Because otherwise you're not clear on your intent, you're not clear on your meaning, and you could be putting something on your body written in blood that does not align with your values or the meaning that you intend. This is also especially important when looking at bind runes. A bind rune is when you combine more than one rune together, and what ends up happening with runes, especially because they're mostly straight lines, is you end up getting different runes that you may not have intended in the bind rune. And also that bind rune may have a significance of its own going back, just as I was talking about a single rune would. So it is very important to think long and hard and carefully and intuitively about getting a rune on your body. But this is but one example. This could apply to all magical languages. Another thing that comes to mind is getting the symbol of a particular deity on your body. So inadvertently, you could be making a binding pact with that deity. So what comes to mind? The symbol of Zeus. If I put that on my body in blood as an act of blood magic without fully understanding what that would mean, I could be entering into a contract with Zeus, bless his wisdom, that I didn't intend. So what I'm saying is, it is very important when using symbology on your body to fully understand what you're doing and to make it a very mindful process. So for instance, when I am getting a tattoo, I am constantly checking in with myself about what my intent for this tattoo is. And leading up to it too, as I'm working with my artist to design it, I'm thinking about what I want to evoke. Now, sometimes that also means that when I get to the point of the tattoo, like my most recent two, I wasn't entirely clear at that moment that I started the process of getting the tattoo exactly how it was going to unfold. But both tattoos are related to Apollo, my primary deity, and I have a deep connection with him and a deep intuitive connection with him, and I also had a deep intuitive understanding of what I was walking into, even if I wasn't fully consciously aware of it until I was getting the tattoo. So without further ado, let's actually get into me showing some of my tattoos and talking about the intent that went into to creating them and getting them. So what I wanted to do is show you the pictures of tattoos that I've gotten and talk you through why I got them and the intent and magic that went into them as I was getting them. So how about we get started? So it took me 15 years to decide on my first tattoo. So take your time, is what I'm saying. But then I settled on this tattoo. It's a gold and purple fleur-de-lis. And to me, this was a symbol of my walk with Apollo. And there's a quick backstory to it. So I had already been several years following the path with himself, bless his wisdom. And I was doing my daily meditations in front of his altar, and I kept seeing a flash of the fleur-de-lis. And it was coming from him, and I was thinking, well, what does this mean? But he wasn't very forthcoming about it. He just kept showing me the symbol almost on a daily basis. So I was talking to my best friend, and I was explaining to her how perplexed I was by this and how weird it was. And then it was a few weeks later where she sent me an article talking about the fleur-de-lis and its symbology. And I learned that the fleur-de-lis was associated with French royalty, and specifically Louis XIV of France, who was called the Sun King and also had a very strong personal relationship with Apollo. He even constructed or furnished what is called the Apollo Salon at Versailles, at his palace in Versailles in France. And so I was like, oh. And I also learned that one of the possible translations of fleur-de-lis is flower of light. And so it all just clicked together. Apollo was saying, this is my symbol. And in my mind, I had already kind of been heading towards a tattoo to Apollo, but I didn't really have a symbol. But after this experience with the fleur-de-lis and meditation, and reading the article, I realized, oh, here's my symbol. So I had it placed on my chest. And as I was getting the tattoo, I put myself into a deep meditative state, which is what I often do, which is what I do every time actually when I'm getting a tattoo. And so I was focused on the experience. I was allowing the pain and the sensations, I was allowing myself to be present in them. And at the same time, I was also constantly praying to Apollo and acknowledging that I am getting this for you. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing this as a connection to you and to show my devotion to you. And so he was with me through the whole experience. And I was very clear on my intent to make this connection with him in a particular way. Now, I was also clear on this not being something that would have me give up my autonomy completely to Apollo. So I was very clear on the boundary that I was setting, that I am saying to you, Apollo, that I am dedicating myself to continue to work with you, but not to subsume and give up my will completely to you. So I think that's a very important distinction. And I'll also link a video up here that I just did a few weeks ago about setting your own terms with deity. So even though I have a really close relationship with Apollo, it's still important to set boundaries and talk about my needs and desires with him and negotiate that with him. So this next tattoo is the symbol, the alchemical symbol for air with a raven wing through it. And to me, the element of air has always been my primary element. Since even before I came to witchcraft, I've often had dreams of flying. I've often had dreams where I'm watching multiple tornadoes go by and they never hurt me. I've always been a communicator, a reader. I've always been very logical. I'm an Aquarius. So there have been lots of elements in my life that have connected me with air. And in magic and witchcraft, I have often gone to air as my primary element. So in ritual, I will often be the one that senses the space with the incense and senses my magical working partners or my coven. And I will sense the circle, and I will often call the element of air the element of east. And so I've had this lifelong affinity to air. And again, in a very similar way to what I was talking about with Apollo, I chose this tattoo to represent my connection to air and my affinity to air. And again, as I was getting this tattoo, I was meditating and I was communing with air, and I was claiming my devotion and my affinity with air, and was very clear about that, and very clear about setting boundaries, as I said before. So then we go to my third tattoo. So this tattoo is of the Green Man, and I actually have been holding this particular design around my neck for many years in the form of my pentacle. The back side of my pentacle is the Green Man, and I actually, and I'll throw up a picture of that as well, actually modeled this tattoo off of this image. And I've always loved the image of the Green Man, first of all. And when I first started my craft journey, I was very much aligned with, I guess, kind of a Wiccan mythos. I practice my relationship with goddess and God. And the aspect of the god that I most aligned with was Hearn, the watcher of the wild places and woods, and also the protector of the wild places and its denizens. And yes, I've walked with him for a long time too. And this tattoo was also a symbol, or is also a symbol, of my devotion to the environment and Mother Earth, and to do what I can to use my voice and my body to protect Mother Earth, and to talk to other people about things that can be done to protect Mother Earth. And so, again, when I was getting this tattoo, I was putting that intent into this tattoo. I was saying with my blood and my pain that I am committed to the sacredness of nature and to the green path, and to doing what I can to walk lightly on this earth. So now we go to my, we're to my fourth tattoo. So this one is, starting from the bottom, the green triangle is the alchemical symbol for earth, and then up is water. If you skip over the middle moon section, you've got fire and you've got air. And in the middle, the moons interlocked symbolizes spirit, and all of them together to me symbolize witchcraft. And so this is my tattoo that shows my lifelong devotion to the craft and the path of a witch and of a wise one. And again, as I was getting this tattoo, I was meditating and confirming that connection and that commitment. This year, I will reach what is called what I am calling my day of apostasy, kind of jokingly, and that is the day that I will have crossed the threshold of being a pagan and a witch longer than I was a Christian. And to me, that's very significant. No one can now ever say to me that this was a fad or a fancy, or that I wasn't serious about it. And this tattoo represents all of that. And so finally, the last two tattoos are my most recent, obviously, that I just got while I was traveling in Arkansas. And I'm going to, before I discuss these, I'm going to put up a short video of me getting them, and then we'll talk about them. Oh, and by the way, all my tattoos are done by Nancy Miller in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Her Instagram is @NancyMillerTattoo. She's amazing. She's a mind reader, and she does amazing line work and amazing design. So I recommend her if you're ever in that area. And I'll link her details below. So these last two tattoos have a bit of a backstory, and they're probably the ones that I walked into the situation to get the tattoos without with the least amount of clarity on what I was getting. And yet, that I was also trusting Apollo because he was guiding me. So, in a way that may sound contradictory, but I've developed my relationship with himself to the point where we've developed a trust. I trust him, he trusts me, and I knew that he wasn't going to steer me wrong in this. So I arrive at the tattoo studio with an intuitive feeling that this is right for me, and yet until I was getting the tattoo, I didn't know what they were for. So the first one is the Sun and Glory tattoo that I had conceived of, and this turned out to be way bigger than I expected. But it turned out that as I was getting the tattoo, I started to understand what it was about. And as I started to understand what it was about, then I was able to put these specific intentions in place in order to set my boundaries and do what I intended and what he intended and meet him in the middle. And I don't want to speak about the details of this tattoo yet. I may in a future video, but suffice it to say, I was acting from a place of centeredness and intuition and trust of him. And I'm okay with how it turned out. The trust was well-founded. There was nothing that was a violation of my boundaries or anything like that. And I guess I bring that up. What I'm getting at is that one can cultivate, especially through the practices of witchcraft, a deep sense of intuitive knowing. And in many ways, that is part of the major point of witchcraft, because it requires you to understand yourself at a level that we don't just come into the world knowing. It's something that has to be cultivated in practice. And so if you deeply and truly know it's right for you, then it's right for you. It's when we deny or don't listen to the voice of caution in ourselves that we get into trouble, because we actually do know what is right and wrong for us. We just have to learn what that feels like and how to listen to it. So this other tattoo that I got at the same time, so when I travel, I carry this tiny little trinket, this arrowhead with me as a symbol of the arrow of Apollo, that I'm shooting straight, that I'm going unhindered and protected from my origin point to my destination. And I took it with me to Arkansas, and as soon as I arrived, I conveniently and promptly misplaced it. And so I realized that the arrow tattoo was a way for me to put that arrow, that confidence, that assured traveling ability onto my skin, just like Apollo is the far darter, the one that can shoot accurately from afar. In some ways, I'm his arrow, and I have put that on my skin now. And that's what this tattoo represents. And as soon as I got the tattoo and got back to my parents' house, I found the arrowhead. So now I have both. What does this tattoo mean? It's pretty simple. This is the tattoo of me going out into the world to represent and act for Apollo, and that I am on the right path, and that my path is assured as long as I'm in line with himself and myself. Oh, and I forgot to say one thing about the Sun and Glory on my shoulder, the fifth tattoo, that when I first was able to look in the mirror right after it was done, I saw him blink at me slowly and kind of slyly, kind of like a cat blink, where they do this, the sort of coy little blink that they do. It was very much like that. And so yeah, again, with the arrow, I was putting that intent into it as I was getting it, and it was a matter of, at that time, the realization of what it meant came into play. And yeah, again, it was in line with intuitively what I knew to be true and right for me. Well, so there you have it. So to sum up all of that, it is so important that you go into any sort of spiritual or religious tattoo, especially if you're using symbology that has been used in other traditions for thousands of years, with clarity, intent, purpose, and deep-seated intuition, and to know exactly what the meaning of what you're putting on your body is. Because when you do it in blood, especially when you're using magical symbology or deistic symbology, you're potentially making commitments that you're not aware of if you're not clear on exactly what that symbology means, and if you're not centered in yourself and in your own intuition and in your own knowledge and wisdom. Well, I hope this was helpful for you. As always, thank you so much for watching and for subscribing. I love your comments. I love to reply to them and discuss. Hopefully soon I will have a Discord server and we can all talk about this and you all can discuss everything together and we can have a community started. Well, again, like I said, thank you so much and have a wonderful weekend and blessed be. Love you all.